This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Kicking off the show is K-State and Washburn law professor Roger McEowen discussing what probate is and what fees can be associated with it. He also explains a case that lends an example of what can and cannot be done. Ernie Minton, Dean of K-State's College of Agriculture and Director of K-State Research and Extension, continues the show as he reviews 2023 for the college and takes a look ahead. The Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts rounds out today's show. K-State's Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Bob Larson answer how to decide between raising large or small mature-sized cows. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show with some information from K-State and Washburn law professor Roger McEowen. Roger, thanks for joining us today.
Well, good to be with you, Shelby.
Talking about probate fees today, and first, what are probate fees?
Well, a probate itself, and the probate fee is what you pay to go through probate of your estate. But what probate is the process under which a decedent's will is verified as a valid and legal will, and then it's the process of distributing the assets of the decedent's estate. So probate is a process where the will is declared valid and then the assets distributed.
And why is this something that often people care about?
Well, we've got a couple of choices at death in terms of how we want things handled. And one is that we could go through a formalized probate if we have a will. And we could have an intestate estate, which it's not really the same thing, but it kind of is, where the state's will, so to speak, the intestacy statute is utilized and the assets are distributed in accordance with that. As an alternative approach, we could have a trust created during life that becomes irrevocable at death, or we could transfer assets away during life into an irrevocable trust. And it wouldn't be a probate at death, but there'd be something comparable. There'd be a trust administration at death. And we worry about those things because they mean different things. They have different implications. The fee structure is different in a probate than it is with a trust administration. Trust administration is private. A will, once it becomes probated, becomes filed as a public record, and people can look at that, and they can see where your assets went, what assets you owned, and who got them. With a trust administration, all that the public gets to see is a certificate of trust existence. They cannot see the terms of the trust. And so privacy is very important to a lot of people, particularly farm and ranchers. And so you want to think, if you haven't thought about this process already, give some serious thought as to how you want things handled upon death.
And thinking about how things are handled, specifically today we are talking about Kansas, and how are Kansas probate fees handled?
Well, in Kansas, state law specifies that every fiduciary, the person that is typically known as the executor in this context, is allowed their necessary expenses incurred in the execution of their trust and shall have, as the statute says, compensation for services, and those of his or her attorneys shall be just and reasonable. So that's the statutory language. That's kind of flowery language, but the last part of that's the key. The fee for handling an estate that an attorney charges is to be just and reasonable. It has to be a reasonable fee. There is no statute in Kansas that allows for a percentage fee for handling a decedent's estate. It's not specifically disallowed if the percentage amount is backed up with itemized timesheets and is ultimately deemed reasonable by the probate court. So in essence, in Kansas, probate fees are based on an hourly rate for the amount of hours reasonably spent working on the estate. In addition, the attorney's fee for handling a decedent's estate is also based on the 8 factors of the Kansas Rules of Professional Conduct. And the probate court, the court that is administering the decedent's will, considers those 8 factors when determining whether the fee charged by the attorney is appropriate.
And something that you mentioned, Roger, is that it has to be an hourly rate and not a flat rate. And is that something specific to Kansas?
That's right. It is specific to Kansas. In Missouri, it's different. Missouri allows for the charging of a flat percentage rate based on the gross estate value of the estate. That's what I'm talking about when I say percentage. Kansas does not. Kansas doesn't disallow it. It just says if you're going to charge a flat percentage of the gross amount of the value of the decedent's estate, you better have time records that back that up. Because you just can't say, here, I've done all this, I'm done with the estate now, I've worked on it the last year, it's all done, here's my bill for 3% of the total, or 4%, or whatever. And the court said, no, you can't do that. Where are your records? Well, I didn't keep records. No, the court will require you to put something together so the court can estimate a fee. But you cannot just have a flat rate in Kansas unless it's supported by itemized billing.
And Roger, could you tell us a little bit about a case we recently had in Kansas that shows this law in action?
That's right. We had a county district court, so the probate court in Chautauqua County, that applied the 8 factors of the Kansas Rules of Professional Conduct to a situation where the attorney did not provide billing records. He didn't keep itemized timesheets. In fact, he told the executor that he was not going to do that. The executor requested it. And he said, no, not going to do it. And he said, we've done a lot of, quote, off-the-books work, end quote, for this individual, this decedent, before she died, and they were going to catch it up in the estate. Now, that's a bad thing to say. You don't want to say that. And he also said, well, this is the way it's always been done. We're going to continue to do it this way, which is also something unfortunate that I think is a problem in the bar across the state. And that is that we just continue to do things the way that we've always done things, and we don't pay attention to what the existing rules are at the time. And the rules in Kansas changed with a court case back in 2009, and the attorney in this situation didn't pick up on that. And so the court looks at the 8 factors, and real quickly, how much time and labor did you put into it? How difficult was the estate? And that's going to be based on the type of assets that are in the estate. What's the level of skill that is required by the attorney to handle the estate, which is tied to the type of assets you're dealing with? Do you have difficult tax questions that are involved, for instance? What's the likelihood, if it's apparent to the client, that the acceptance of the employment by the attorney will preclude other employment that he or she could be doing? Again, that ties into that first one, is how difficult is this job? How difficult is this estate? The next one is the fee customarily charged in the locality for similar legal services, and that can, in some situations, come in as a factor. Next one is the amount involved in the results obtained and the time limitations imposed by the client or by the circumstances. Another factor is the nature and the length of the professional relationship that the attorney had with the client that has now died. The next one is the experience, reputation, and ability of the lawyer or lawyers performing the services. And then finally, whether the fee is fixed or contingent. Those are factors that the court's going to look at.
And in this case, this is something that the conservator caught and really saved the family quite a bit of money.
Well, you raised a point there. The executor of this estate had previously been a conservator for the decedent for about 7 years before she died. And he was handling her matters, her affairs, and the attorney was representing the conservatee, the lady here in this instance that eventually passes. And the attorney would bill for his services in handling financial matters and so forth that the conservator had to deal with. And there were legal issues that would come up periodically in that 7-year period. But the attorney would always file an itemized statement with the conservator, and the conservator would look it over, and the court would approve that, and there was no problem. Well, upon death in 2021, after having served as a conservator for 7 years, the conservator was appointed the executor of the estate, and wasn't receiving itemized billing statements. And he communicated with the attorney, I want that. My expectation is you're going to continue to provide itemized statements. And the attorney at that point answered him in an email and said, no, they don't have any plan on doing that. He said, quote, I feel comfortable asking for a fee based on 3%. If you want to oppose it, that's fine, end quote. And it goes on and on. And he said, no, you're not going to get an itemized billing statement. We're just going to take 3% of the gross estate value, which was a little bit over $4.5 million. So he does all the estate work, and at the end of it, he turns in his fee, flat 3%, so $137,000 fee. And the executor challenged that, and the county district court applied the factors and said, look, you cannot, without billing records, you cannot charge a flat fee. You have to have your billing records that support your fee amount. And he didn't have that, and the court cut $80,000 off of the fee amount and trimmed that way down. So it's a really rough case, but I think it sends a message to attorneys handling estates in the state of Kansas, the district court here is right, that you've got to be careful. You have to follow those Kansas rules of professional conduct.
So for people who maybe are dealing with the probate and aren't the attorney or aren't the court, what do you really want to remind them about?
Well, it's a couple of things. One is you can avoid this whole problem if you would have a trust. A trust will avoid probate. Now, it doesn't avoid cost. There's still a trust administration process at the end, but that's usually less expensive than what would be a comparable probate process, even though the cost up front to create the trust would be a little bit more. So if you don't want to deal with the probate process, plus the public aspect of a will becoming published, a public record when you die, then you want to go the trust approach. And so that's one aspect of this. The second one is the message to the members of the bar that handle estates, and that is that you cannot just simply charge a flat rate. You have to be familiar with those Kansas rules of professional conduct, keep good time records, and stay in good communication with the executor and meet those expectations of the client.
Roger, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information when it comes to probate and probate fees.
Thank you, Shelby.
That was Kansas State University and Washburn Law Professor Roger McEowen. If you'd like to read more about this topic, you can do so from one of his recent blog articles. The article is titled Probate Fees, How Much Are They? There are a few different ways you can find it. I will link it in today's show notes on ag.ksu.edu. You can find it on his website at Washburnlaw.edu/WALTR, or you can also find it on AgManager.info or on RFD-TV. I will put links to all of these in today's show notes. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing how 2023 has been for the College of Agriculture and K-State Research and Extension. And in to talk about it, we're joined by K-State's College of Agriculture Dean and Director of K-State Research and Extension, Ernie Minton. Ernie, thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be here. Happy to visit.
Ernie, first talking about a few priorities here at Kansas State University and the College of Agriculture. Facilities really ready to make some improvements.
Yeah, we've had a really, really big 2023 in terms of planning for and fundraising and all the things that go along with changes in terms of upgrades to our facilities. And so in May, we had the groundbreaking for the agronomy education and innovation centers, which will be probably the first project where we'll actually turn dirt next year. So we did that, again in May. And this past week, we had the Animal Science Arena groundbreaking as well. So that's exciting. And we anticipate then sometime in 2024, we haven't set a date yet, the third piece of the Ag Innovation Initiative, new construction and major renovations will be associated with the Global Center and then the major renovations to Call and Weber Hall. So that will be sometime probably in the spring when we'll have that groundbreaking. But this is really exciting stuff. We haven't had this type of major construction in the college for decades, actually.
And this isn't something that's happened overnight. It's taken quite a bit of time to get here.
Right. I was Associate Dean for Research from 2008 to 2018, and we've been talking about new facilities all the way through that time period. And the point is, we've been talking and knowing that we needed to refresh our facilities for, well over a decade. Finally, a lot of things came together, not least the investment from the state, but also the leadership now that we have in Anderson Hall with President Linton, and I should also mention Marshall Stewart. It's just so much easier to accomplish these things when you have great leadership and a great pull from Anderson Hall, and I want to acknowledge that as well. I'd also like to acknowledge, too, that even though we've been busy at the college level from a fundraising perspective to help make this happen, we've had fantastic support from the leadership, too, at the foundation, as well as our ag development team. So it's really been, honestly, a campus-wide effort, and I'm so very appreciative of that. And the beneficiaries of that ultimately will be the citizens of Kansas, and certainly our students that come and major in one of our departments here in the college.
And as we're talking about things that have been happening in 2023, K-State Research and Extension has really had some encouragement and push for more outreach and engagement.
One of the priorities that's been identified in the Economic Prosperity Plan is something called K-State 105. And really, if we were to talk about what K-State 105 is in just a few key words, I think the big word is engagement. It's statewide engagement, but it's also engagement of local communities, and as the name would imply, it has the potential to impact all 105 counties. The other thing, too, that's significant about K-State 105 is that it really has highlighted the fact that K-State aspires to be an engaged university at the university level. And part of that engagement is extension, and of course, we announced at the K-State Research and Extension Annual Conference this move of extension being elevated to the university level and getting it on a level playing field with academics and research. And those are all really, really good things. But this is a significant change for extension. It's worth noting when we kind of note the highlights of this past year.
While thinking about extension, we talk with a lot of the different extension specialists here on Agriculture Today, but just a reminder that there are so many more extension professionals than just the people here at Kansas State University.
Oh, absolutely. Those local units are really where the rubber meets the road, where the programming happens, whether it's in ag and natural resources, community vitality, or 4-H, obviously. But, specialists for sure. But the local units are also very, very key in terms of delivery of extension, and they're doing a great job. The data that we've been able to accumulate, and these are not subjective; they're objective numbers in terms of both direct and indirect contacts with citizens. Just really, really increased over the past many years. So we're really getting great penetration with extension, but we hope with this change to a university level priority that we get even better.
And going beyond our 105 counties here in Kansas, you've done some international travel in 2023.
Yeah, this past year, the college sponsored a sorghum conference in Montpellier, France. This was the first week in June, essentially. I don't recall the inclusive dates, but it was early in June 5 to whatever the end date was. But at any rate, yes, we traveled to that, and I want to point out that this was really the conclusion of a 10-year run for our sorghum and millet innovation lab, and really to launch the next chapter of that, which we termed the global collaboration for sorghum and millet. And so we began to work on that. But yes, we had a great presence, I'd say, with K-State represented very, very well at that international conference.
As we talk about probably one of the most important things to K-State, our students.
All right. Of course, we would have had fall commencement this past week. And that's always a time when we remember, kind of the important thing that we're all about, and that is adding value to the lives of young people through awarding degrees to our students. The other thing so that's kind of has just happened recently, so we do have that fresh in our minds. The other thing that I'd mention is we finally have positive news with regard to enrollment as well. Enrollment of, or at least the numbers of new students in the college is up a little bit at least, but that's positive news. And I don't want to leave the impression that we don't have headwinds ahead. We will. We're going to have to continue to be very, very competitive regionally and also out of state to attract students to the great programs in the college. But I'd say we've got a great team that's up to the task, and we're looking forward to 2024.
For people who would like to support K-State College of Agriculture, how could they do that?
Well, there are always opportunities for that, and we've got a great team at the K-State Foundation. I'd say the first contact, Carrie Weefall, and she can get anyone in contact with the right person if she turns out not to be the right person. But we certainly value the support that we get from our donors and our alumni because we couldn't deliver the programs with the quality that we would want to have without that support.
As we look forward to 2024, Ernie, what makes you excited?
Well, there are a lot of things, but the thing that I've got to mention and was mentioned earlier in this segment was next year we'll actually see dirt turn on these three projects that I mentioned: Ag Innovation and Research Center, the Animal Sciences Arena, and I imagine it may be later in the year, maybe early fall, I think we're going to see some dirt turn between Call and Weber Hall for the new Global Center. And we may eventually, it may be beyond 2024 before we get started on the major renovations in Call and Weber, but that's going to be exciting because it'll be very, very visible to people.
We were just kind of looking at 2024, but now maybe just taking a quick look past 2024, are there some exciting things that might be on the horizon?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things come to mind. One is, and this is probably a very obvious one, but next year the university is asking all the academic colleges to plug into the next-gen K-State strategic plan, and so we'll be working on that at the college level in 2024. And this strategic plan has goals that sort of midterm goals at year 2027 and then finally in 2030 for how the College of Agriculture will plug into the research goals and aspirations and also the growth in academic programs. We've also got stretch, I'd say, fundraising goals with regard to the foundation. But these are things that we're going to put to paper in 2024 that should kind of lay out the roadmap for the coming several years.
Ernie, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and reflect on 2023, but then also look forward for K-State College of Agriculture.
Absolutely. The future is bright for agriculture at Kansas State University.
That was K-State's College of Agriculture Dean and Director of K-State Research and Extension, Ernie Minton. In today's show notes on ag.ksu.edu, I will put a link to K-State's College of Agriculture website, as well as Kansas State University's foundation. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. We round out our Wednesday show on Agriculture Today with the Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts.
Hi, welcome to BCI Ask the Experts, where our experts will answer your questions. I'm Brad White. Happy to have two experts with me today, Dr. Phillip Lancaster.
Good morning, guys.
And Dr. Bob Larson.
Hello, guys.
We have a great question from a listener today, and as you guys answer, you'll get up to 10 points for your answers. If you have a question for us, you can send it to us at bci@ksu.edu. Today's listener question reads, I've heard people talk about larger mature cows or smaller mature cows. Which would be best for my herd? Phillip, I'm going to go to you first.
Well, there's a lot of depends in this question and conversation. You know, from an industry perspective, the larger industry, larger size mature cows have benefited us in quite a few ways. We've gotten more pounds of beef per cow over the last 30, 40 years because we have increased that mature cow size. And so we have actually decreased the maintenance energy requirements per unit of beef in this system because of the larger mature size.
So you're saying larger,
from an industry's perspective, is better.
But it depends. 5 points for Phillip to start. Bob?
All right. So I think one of the things it depends on is the cost, because with a large cow, I'm probably going to need more inputs. Yeah, I need more feed, so that might be grains, byproduct feeds, it might be hay. But I'm probably going to need to import resources, nutrient resources, to get those cows through the times of the year where forage is dormant and poor quality. I'm going to need way more of that if they're a big cow. And there are parts of the country, because of the basis and the availability of feedstuffs, where that's really expensive and really hard to do. So if you think about parts of the country where rainfall is pretty low, where there's not abundant supplemental resources, I think in those parts of the country and in those ranches, a smaller cow really makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times in that situation, we're also selling at weaning. So where feedstuffs are expensive and we're selling at weaning, I really think it's important to keep your cow size moderated. Maybe not as small as they were when I was a kid, but still pretty small in comparison. So I think that's some of the it depends that Phillip was talking about. But I think there's quite a bit of the country where a small cow fits pretty well.
So Bob comes in on the small cow side. So both of you are starting out with 5 points. But now this is a one-word answer for this one. When you say large or you say small, give me the cow weight that you have in your head.
So when I'm thinking small, I'm talking 1,000 to 1,100. So that's and again, that's bigger than when I was very young.
Okay. Phillip, that wasn't a one-word answer, but you were super close. Phillip?
For a large size cow, I'm thinking 1,400 pounds plus.
Okay. So 1,400 pounds, 1,100 pounds, so you've got some difference there in what you're thinking. So if I'm trying to figure out, and both of you, just from conversations before, have said match the cow to the environment, tell me how I figure out for my operation, should I have a 1,400 or 1,100 pound? Phillip, I'm going to start with you.
That's a great question. Bob and I have been trying to do some research to figure out how we come up with that answer. But in general, the higher quantity of forage that I produce and the higher nutritional value of that forage, the larger the mature cow that I can have, and she's still productive. And that's kind of the frame of mind you need to have when you're thinking about what size cow I should have on my operation.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, I really don't have much to add to that. It's really things like rainfall, my forage, and again, something that can help in a dry area. If there's some crop production, some irrigated crop production or something like that makes imported nutrients relatively inexpensive, I think I can put my cow size up again. So you start with rainfall, forage production, but then other resources that are in the vicinity and their relative cost.
Okay. And one of my metrics that I might use to measure, would it be calf weaning weight per cow weaning weight? Is that one of the things that you'd look at as far as efficiency or not?
Yeah, that's what's been used a lot typically is what does my cow weigh at a body condition score 5? So you try to make that adjustment if she's not currently at a body condition score 5. And then what's the ratio of that weight to her 205-day adjusted weaning weight for her calf?
Excellent. So you may have to look at that for your operation. Bob ended up with 9. Phillip ended up with 8. Thanks for joining us today, guys, and appreciate your input on cow size.
Once again, that was BCI's Ask the Experts. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.